Alex, what's going on with Chrome extensions?
Well, so Chrome for years has had this extension mechanism, what they call, manifest v2, which all the ad blockers were built on, right? And they let you plug these things in and they control what your browser does and toss the ads and stuff. And about 6 years ago, Google announced they were going to this new, safer, more secure v3 version of the API. And it set everyone into a tizzy because it looked basically impossible to build an ad blocker. And now Google is going ahead and they are going to, in the next few weeks, kill all the v2 extensions and say if it's not v3, it won't work anymore.
So what's the difference between v2 and v3?
With v2, there was this core concept that every extension had this hidden web page where it could hide things. But really, it had access to everything. Those plugins running in your browser could sort of see every web page you viewed and therefore, see your email address and read your emails and just everything. So with this v3, things are much more limited. It only has permission to do what you want it to do, and it shouldn't be able to run off and do such crazy things. And there were bad stories. Plugins that would get very popular doing something nice, and then the owner would sell it. And the new owner would suddenly push out a software update that did bad things to hundreds of thousands of users' computers. And that happened.
So there are real security risks with v2 Chrome extensions.
There are real security risks. I mean, if you trust the people, some of these ad blockers, I think, have built good reputations. In order to jump in, stop all the malware and stop all the tracking, they need to be able to get in there everywhere.
Because there are also real security risks with unblocked, unfettered ads, right?
Oh, there sure are. My mother-in-law actually called me over, said she was having trouble with her computer. When I got there, she said the New York Times had infected her computer with a virus. I was like, all right. Well, I look at her computer and it was infected with a virus. So I used Windows Defender and I scrubbed the virus off. And the next day, the New York Times apologized that they had accidentally run an advertisement from some company they hadn't worked with very long that had some JavaScript that took advantage of a security hole in the browser and had infected all these computers with viruses. She was totally right. It happens. I mean, there's both that level actually trying to hack your computer, and then there's the more subtle tracking you everywhere you go and building up this information about you, figuring out your political preferences, figuring out your medical health. Who knows who they're sharing them with? I mean, they're not bound by HIPAA. They're not your provider. They're just creepy people watching your browser, right?
Right. And Google themselves is involved with ads like those.
That is most of their money, right? Personalized advertising.
So is this only going to affect Chrome, or does it affect other browsers too?
Oh, it affects pretty much all of them, because it turns out that every major browser except for Mozilla's Firefox is taking Google's open source Chromium code and, changing the menu bars and making a few modifications. Well, Google has gone in. They've ripped that v2 manifest code out, and unless these guys do a lot of work, it's gone, and they're not doing a lot of work. So just pretty much every other browser, next time you get an upgrade, is going to have pushed you this v3 manifest. And so Mozilla, not wanting to be left behind, they've added support for these v3 manifests, but I believe they're saying that they're going to leave support for the v2 for a long time, trying to get these people who like the old ad blockers to stick around.
So even without browser-based ad blockers like uBlock Origin, you can still block ads on your network, right? Okay.
Right. So there's sort of two different ways to block ads. You can block them in your browser, which is really nice in that it sees everything. It can read the text and see the images and sort of every level it can see it. But of course, it only supports your browser, right? Other apps and other computers and stuff aren't supported. Or you can block it at the network level by using a DNS ad blocker, like AdGuard or the one built into ConnectFi Hotspot. Speedify actually supports AdGuard if you want, or Pi-hole is another famous one. And these things, they have lists of websites that pretty much just serve ads. And when you try to connect to them, they tell you there's no such site. And so it just fails. So you get, you go to the news page and it goes and tries to load all those ads, banner ads and fake story headlines, and they're in the lists. They fail to load, so you get the page without any ads. And mostly it works pretty well. A little less subtle, right? I mean, some of these big companies that are both ads and content, Facebook and Twitter
And YouTube.
Will serve the ads from the same exact computer that's serving the content you want. And then this sort of network-based blocker can't do it, can't help, where the browser-based would still be able to help.
Why is it that the browser-based ones are able to help?
Oh, because they can actually look at which page on the site right? The DNS level can't, because HTTPS now encrypts all the content going in and out so that no one on the network can spy on your stuff. Unfortunately, that includes the ad blocker on your router.
What's the issue that these ad blockers have with the V3 API?
Initially, there was so much missing from the V3 API. They couldn't do lots of things. They couldn't remove, like if you clicked on a URL and there was obvious tracking stuff on the end, they couldn't remove that. There were lots of things like that missing. And so people accused Google purposely trying to kill the ad blockers. I believe the Google people when they say that's not what happened. They were just trying to solve the security problem. But they're not paid a lot of money to spend a lot of time thinking about how to keep the ad blockers working because they're in the ad business. But the gotcha, the thing that Google did not back down on, the thing that the ad blockers hate that's built in, is that V3 extensions cannot download any sort of code off the internet and run it. And that includes lists of ads, lists of sites that serve ads. They're not allowed to pull those down, which means the only way for an ad blocker to update its list of ads is to push a new version out. And to push a new version out, you have to submit it to Google to get approved.
They have to review it.
And they have to review it. And who knows whether or not a copy of this list is making its way over the advertising people at YouTube. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, it's this massive delay. I mean, with Connectify Hotspot's ad blocker, I know we are updating the list of ads every 24 hours. And I don't think we're the fastest in the business. I think there are other companies that are updating their list every single hour because they're in a battle. The people running the ad things are looking at the ad blockers and saying, oh, they're blocking this URL. We'll change the URL real quick to get around that. It is a real, battle of wits, and Google has put their foot on the brake, right? Not slammed it to the ground, but you can't go full speed. Every single change to the list of ads has to go through Google. And that is a legitimate complaint. Up until now, the Chrome browser on iOS hasn't supported extensions. There are people who online think part of the point of the V3, the way the extensions work differently, how carefully controlled they are, is that maybe Google is trying to get permission from Apple to run these V3 extensions in Chrome for iOS. Because on iOS, Chrome is not really Chromium, right? Apple insists they have to use the Safari WebKit browsing engine, and it's just kind of putting Google's bookmarks and stuff on top to make it look like Chrome. But maybe the V3, I'm not sure, might get Apple to allow extensions to run on the phone. And that would be a big upgrade to the phone, right?